Rodney, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome into the game here in T-Town.
Hey, Ryan, I am. Your bumper music there takes me back. I was a senior in high school, 1978. That was Grease. That was the Bee Gees.
Yes, the Gibbs, man. Those guys can sing. Those guys can sing. Now, were you doing the groove? Were you moving a little bit? I mean, what was it like listening to the Bee Gees back in your heyday?
Oh, man, yeah, it was, man. We had a lot of high school dances. You know, the Bee Gees back in that time. Grease obviously was very popular, and hey, I did my thing.
I got you. The British invasion. So, Mark, when we look at this season, we've kind of had a hard time describing, and maybe I could ask you this way. Has Tua Tagovailoa exceeded your expectations of maybe what you thought he was capable of accomplishing coming into the season?
You know, Ryan, you never know, really. Obviously, we thought he was extremely talented and gifted, and they've got a lot of great players around him, and certainly he's capable of doing big things. I don't know that I ever really had any numbers imagined in my head. But, hey, we saw him from very early on last year, and you could tell he was a special talent, and then you just don't do what he did in that championship game and not think that this guy's got big things in front of him. So, I'm not really saying that I don't think he's exceeded my expectations, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't done extremely well. I really thought that he was a guy that is going to do and will do big things.
It's amazing to watch him just play the game. The way that, Nick Saban kept using this word throughout the offseason. I kept saying this has got to be a hint. He kept calling him a distribution center. He has been just that throughout this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you look at all the players around him too, I mean, he's got a core. Again, he's got all the tools that you need as a quarterback. He's just the guy, like you said, and Coach Saban had said for a long time, when you have all these weapons, you have those receivers, those four receivers that they have, and then the tight end that is really, really outstanding, Irv Smith, and the running backs and the way that they are all so versatile. And you just need a guy that can distribute the ball, and he's done that extremely well to all of them. That's why it's kind of balanced. You don't see one guy kind of racking up all the numbers and, the other guy's kind of suffering in terms of their stats. I mean, he's a guy that can really get it to everybody.
Well, and everybody wants me to follow up with this question, even though I think I know your answer. What do you think is the need? Do you think it's going to be okay? Do you think they should play him? Just your overall thoughts on Tua's knee, because it seems like that's been a major topic of conversation.
Yeah, Ryan, I think it's kind of unfortunate because I think a lot of people have speculated and put out information that probably isn't true. Now, listen, Nick Saban, for 12 years, you've seen him. If a guy is ready to play, if he can play, he's going to be out there. That doesn't mean that guys aren't banged up occasionally, have some bumps, bruises, and issues. Listen, don't forget, in 2012, A.J. McCarron had a shoulder issue that he was dealing with, and it hampered him a little bit. It didn't stop him from playing, though. He may not have had quite the arm strength that he had, previous to that, and then once it healed, but he still played through it a little bit. He wasn't in danger, but I think with Tua's knee, he's got a strain. From my understanding, it's a PCL sprain in the back of the knee, and it can be painful at times. But hey, I saw him at practice yesterday. He was moving extremely well. He was dropping, did not seem to have any issues. Now, does that mean you can't tweak it like you did on the run against LSU a little bit, or take a hit on the knee and maybe have some pain and, make it difficult? And I think last week a lot of people speculated maybe that was what happened, but, my understanding, it was more of a thigh bruise or a hit on the thigh that kind of would not loosen up. So, again, no, I don't question. I don't think Nick Saban's ever going to necessarily put his players in a bad situation. He knows how important, it is to have all of his best players ready for the stretch run. But at the same time, if they're ready to play and they can play, you've got to put them out there. I mean, that's just the way it is. I don't think you should start sitting guys as a rule. No, by no means.
Anything on Jonah Williams that you can give us? Because there's been a lot of questions about Jonah Williams, the left tackle, and maybe some limited yesterday in practice, but should be okay. Just your thoughts on Jonah Williams.
Brian, he was not participating during that brief media viewing period that we saw. We did see him moving around a little bit. It was dressed out, but again, he was not participating in the drills that we saw. Now, some people told us that we trust and well connected there that Jonah's going to be fine, that it's nothing serious to worry about. So, I take that's the truth. So, and also, by the way, Deonte Brown was dressed out yesterday. Now, he didn't appear to be wearing the regular cleats. He appeared to be wearing tennis shoes with that turf toe, but was not participating in any of the drills that we saw. And exactly when he'll be back, we really don't know.
Well, and you look at Deonte Brown. I mean, what a guy that has continued doing what he's doing and has really added another element to this offensive line. I mean, we've had 2 offensive linemen in 2 days. Barrett Jones, 2-time All-American yesterday, was part of our show. Mike Johnson today. And both of them talked about Deonte Brown changing the look of that offensive line and maybe a little bit of a drop-off when you put Lester Cotton in there. And I hate saying that because he's a local kid, and I pull for the kid, and I like him, and I want him to do well, but he's just not been as consistent as number 65 has.
Well, we noticed in the Tennessee game that was Deonte's first start, and we talked about it on your show, Ryan, that after that game, that 2 things that stood out in that game was just how Alabama's interior running game and running game as a whole seemed to really step it up a notch. They had some issues running in between the tackles and right up the middle, and I thought a lot of that was much better in that game, and we continue to see that progress against LSU. Saw a really good first quarter against Mississippi State when they ran for 88 yards in that quarter. And also, the defense, Ryan, in that Tennessee game. That's when we first started really detecting that you could sense, I think, that this defense was starting to come together a little bit. The defensive front played extremely well. The linebackers seemed to play better. The secondary has been, really good given all the inexperience, I think. And so we've seen that progress every week from that Tennessee game. So I think those are 2 really promising parts of this team is the running game and the way the defense has really come on in the last month or so.
Rodney, but maybe the surprise, if we were not talking about Tua Tagovailoa as much, I think we would be talking a lot about Quinnen Williams. And I feel like that we should give him more credit. We are giving him credit. But, I mean, look at the season this young man has had from Winona High School there in Birmingham, coming here, and he's pretty much a poster for Nick Saban's process, waiting his turn, and when that opportunity presents itself, he has taken full advantage of it.
Yeah, he's been great. He's been dominant. I mean, these last 2 games, the 2 of the better opponents that they've played, obviously, he stepped his game up even more, I think, become more and more dominant in those 2 games, it certainly appears. And well, he's got a couple of defensive lineman awards here in the last couple of weeks, so that kind of shows you what everybody thinks. And he's just been a fantastic player. And Ryan, in the preseason, when a lot of people were saying, who's somebody that might step up on the defense, we said that this defensive line eventually was going to be, we felt like it would be really good with Isaiah Buggs and Raekwon Davis, and to watch out for number 92, Quinnen Williams, because you remember last year, Ryan, every time basically he got into the game, he made things happen. You could see that potential last year. And again, I'll be honest with you, I did not know that Quinnen Williams would have this kind of a dominant season, but I did think that he was going to be a really strong factor.
Looking at Josh Jacobs, and Nick Saban, I know was asked about it yesterday in the Wildcat formation, and sometimes certainly that play has been very effective when Alabama's went to it. But overall, Josh Jacobs is another one of those guys that maybe is a big part of this offense that we should maybe give more credit to.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ryan. I mean, he probably doesn't get enough talk. And the scary thing about it for Josh is, or if you're an Alabama fan, you really like what you see out of Josh is, you worry now about this, what kind of grade is he going to get from the NFL? Because I think he's going to get a really high grade, Ryan, here as a junior. So we'll keep an eye on that later. But, the thing about Josh is he's never really quite been healthy. I don't think he's had some issues until this year. And I think that we saw glimpses in the past of what he could do. He's so versatile. And Ryan, you just see him now running between the tackles. We've seen his speed. We've seen his quickness, his ability to cut on a dime, make big plays, return kicks, and all of those things. And if you looked at that Mississippi State defense, which was very, very, very physical, very, very talented defense, and you saw Josh Jacobs taking some of those runs right up the middle, and I mean, he was leaving guys scattered in his wake. He was delivering blows. It's amazing at his size. He's not small by any means, but I mean, he's not like a 225-pound load either. But he just lowered his shoulder, and I mean, he laid people out on some of those runs. I think Josh Jacobs is a big time player.
Rodney, is there a concern around this Alabama team other than health as they travel through these final few weeks, 2 weeks of the regular season, and get ready to go to Atlanta to play for the SEC title and kind of a almost a playoff game or a play-in game when you look at the championship game there in Atlanta? Is there a concern that you have?
Well, I'm not like finger pointing or anything, but I think if they lined up for a 40-yard field goal to win or lose, I would be very, very nervous. Maybe even a 25-yard field goal. And again, not that both of us can't do it or the whole process of what it takes to get a field goal up and good. That's not really necessarily pinpointed, but they've had some issues, Ryan. You know that. And, he did hit that 49-yarder on Saturday. Hopefully that's something that kind of, builds some confidence and moving forward. But that's one thing that really, kind of concerns me as you look forward. And, I just, you certainly, you mentioned the health of it. I think that's extremely important. And I think this team is going to stay grounded. I think Nick Saban is the best there is at that. And I think he probably, in a way, like he can go back now after this game against Mississippi State, and he can talk to his offense, and he can, I think when they've been blowing people out, sometimes you need a little adversity to kind of point to, and I think he'll use that for the plus, for the benefit.
Rodney, we had a chance earlier on a Throwback Thursday presented by Spiller Furniture Mattress. We caught up with Jarrett Johnson. Remember that young man that was a two-time captain here, and he played 12 years in the pros. I mean, you get to thinking about that as a defensive lineman who transitioned to a linebacker, and he was sharing how he really made that transition with Ozzie Newsome's help in the Baltimore Ravens. But Jarrett Johnson was a special football player in the NFL, and certainly here at the University of Alabama as a two-time captain here in Tuscaloosa.
Well, Ryan, I remember interviewing Jarrett Johnson when he was a high school player, so that shows you how long we've been doing it. He was out of Chiefland, Florida. He was at one of the smaller schools there. I think it was a 1A school. He was a dominant player. A lot of people wondered, even though he was highly recruited, I mean, he had offers from everybody. A lot of people wondered, playing in that small competition, how would he kind of translate to this level? And he was just a great player from very early on. I think was it his freshman year, Ryan, I think, or very early in his career when he had the great play. I think it was 1999. Yeah, it was his freshman year. He had the great play, if you remember, coming off the edge as a pass rusher, and he jumped up with his left hand. He tipped that pass. May have been Jesse Palmer in that SEC championship game, and I think the ball was intercepted by Reggie Grimes. Yeah, he was a player from the very, very beginning.
Yeah, and they said they loved the way he. You just don't. It's hard to kind of talk about a defensive lineman getting transitioned to a linebacker. He dropped a lot of weight, and like I said, he played 12 years in the pros. So Jarrett Johnson going to be one of those honorary captains, along with A.C. Carter, deuce number 2. I think
same recruiting class. I think, if I'm not mistaken, those were 2. A.C. Carter, from down in Tallahassee, was another big time recruit for Alabama.
Hey, Rodney, give us an update on recruiting. What's it look like for Alabama? What's the latest? Can you give us a couple of maybe recruiting notes? I'll encourage people to go to the website where you exchange quite a bit, TiderInsider.com. But give us an update on some recruiting out there that involves Alabama.
Yeah, Ryan, I think, on your show, we've talked about this. I said that a long time ago that I thought Alabama had a chance to have the number 1 class, offensive and defensive line classes in the country. And I still think that's a possibility. And that's where the games are won and lost. This could be on paper one of Alabama's great defensive line classes. When you start looking at some of the guys they've got committed, Antonio Alfano now a 5-star player, which I thought he was all along. I think now again, these guys still have to sign. Justin Aboibe out of Georgia is a guy that really is moving up, and I thought he was a 5-star player. Really like Byron Young out of Mississippi. I think he's got a chance to be another Dalvin Tomlinson type player. I think they're in great shape with Ishmael Sobcher, the number 1 defensive tackle in the country, out of Louisiana. Now again, LSU's still very strongly in that as well. But I like Alabama's position there. They've got DJ Dell committed out of Clay Chalkville. They're in on some other guys. Braylon Ingram's already committed out of Florida, who I think is going to be you talk about a guy that's kind of like Quinnen Williams. Maybe he's got that kind of potential down the road. Kind of reminds me of Quinnen in high school. I'll put it that way. Ryan, they've got to finish strong at inside linebacker. And Nakobe Dean's the quote-unquote number one inside backer in the country out of Horn Lake, Mississippi. I think he'll be here on an unofficial visit for the Auburn game. Alabama, Georgia, LSU, don't count them out. But Alabama's in pretty good position with him. There's a 5-star backer out in California, same high school where Tosh Lapoy graduated, Concord de La Salle. He's Henry, and I won't even begin to say his last name. I call him Henry T. And he reminds a lot of people of C.J. Mosley. He's just a tremendous player. I think Alabama's in really good position with him. On the offensive side, Ryan, the number one target on the board could possibly, I'm not saying he is, but when you just look at it in terms of need, there's a kid at IMG Academy named Evan Neal. He's a big offensive tackle, 6'7", about 360. And he's a guy that reminds a lot of people coming out of high school of Cam Robinson. Some people think he's got even more potential than Cam did. So he's a tremendous player that I think will commit to Alabama on December 19th when he makes his decision on ESPN. He's got a teammate, a 5-star running back, Trey Sanders. I like Alabama's position with him as well. So, I know you don't have time to go through them all, but that's a few that I think Alabama's in good position with, and I really feel good about where Alabama is. They've got a chance to have that number one class again.
Well, and Rodney, I think the one thing that you back up just for a couple of seconds, and maybe we didn't anticipate some of the players. You mentioned a couple of minutes ago, Josh Jacobs, see exactly how he will grade. You look at a guy like Quinnen Williams. I don't think we were accounting for losing some of these guys
right.
that have had these great seasons that now will get that NFL attention maybe they deserve.
No question about it. I mean, I think there's a good chance that Josh is going to get a really, really high grade, and probably Quinnen too. The one thing I think about Quinnen, and again, I know everybody's saying high first round, and he may be. I'm not disputing that. But the one thing, if I look at him and I say physically, and Ryan, you've seen him, it's not that he's not big, but when you're talking about NFL big and ready, if there's one thing that maybe he could do, maybe he needs to do, is another year in that Scott Cochran program to get a little bit bigger, maybe like Jonathan Allen did. And I'm just saying that's something that if he didn't go to the NFL, that might be why. But who knows?
Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com, TiderInsider.com, where you can become a member. Check it out. Member Center there. The forum's always a great place to hang out and a lot of exchange of information. Your source for Crimson Tide news and views, it's Tider Insider. It's Rodney Orr's TiderInsider.com. Rodney, as always, thank you again for being a part of the show, and I appreciate the conversation.
Hey, Ryan, appreciate it. You guys have a great evening.